All right, welcome everybody back to the latest episode of the uber popular Arbol webinar series. My name is Daniel Miner. I work with Arbol, and I'm happy to be hosting these discussions. We're really looking forward to talking more about the latest methodologies and paradigms and how to support students to turn them away from financial vulnerability and toward brighter futures. And I'm really looking forward to getting into that a little bit more today. But first, we want to kick it off with kick it over to the webinar sponsors, Arbol and their CEO, Dave Gonzalez. Dave, how you doing today?
Dan, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for asking. Tell me a little bit more about Arbol and talk about how you got to know Danielle.
Yeah, so Arbol is a financial wellness platform that helps colleges and universities reduce student dropout by preventing financial disruption. You know, Daniel and I met or crossed paths while he was at the University at Buffalo. At the time, I believe he was setting up the Financial Wellness Center, and we were just an idea at the time, or just kind of like working out the initial concept of what Arbol would eventually become. What really struck me when I had the opportunity to be Daniel was, his unique perspective on looking at the students' financial wellness more holistically, I think, than the colleges were currently doing it. And, how he was actually able to kind of mobilize a group and really get it kickstarted from nothing. And, we were on similar paths and, just thought he'd be a good person to talk about what he learned and things that have been effective during his time at UB and now at Stanford.
One quick beat before we do kick it over to Danielle. Dave, what do you mean by more holistically? What is the current structure of those services, and what does it mean to you to think bigger?
Sure. It's looking at the full cost of attendance that extends beyond just getting the student into the maximum financial aid and merit scholarship that the students can get from your institution. It's looking at the net price, the portion of the bill that's not covered, and then also extending that into the living expenses and ensuring that students are meeting their basic needs and school supplies that aren't covered from financial aid. So making sure that students have a more holistic plan and understanding on how to cover those costs.
Great, thank you. Also on the call today, I jumped the gun a little bit, but we have Danial Khan, a financial wellness program manager at Stanford University, and we feel really grateful that you've lent some of your time today, Daniel. So thanks for jumping on.
I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So Dave kind of set the scene a little bit. You were at UB. Talk to us a little bit about your career path. Why did you choose student services, and how did you end up going from UB to Stanford?
Yeah, so I grew up in Buffalo, and I was a first generation low-income student, and so I feel like college was maybe not a guaranteed path that I was going to pursue, but I knew that even in high school, I did want to have my career to be something that's more specific to what I wanted to learn about, and I was already trying to read more about how to understand people and to learn how I can help people. And so I went to UB for psychology and health and wellness promotion. And then I did my dual masters. So I did my MBA and my MSW, so business and social work, which don't seem like they go together. But I found that it was a really powerful combination because I felt like the business strategy mixed with how to promote social impact and how to genuinely help people, those two worlds blending together was really powerful. And that actually led me into doing this AmeriCorps contract. So financial wellness was something that I started learning about during grad school. I was having conversations with social workers about how to not only promote their own personal finances, but also how to talk to their clients, their patients, whomever, about money, because it does come up a lot of times. And so I became a certified financial social worker. And then after graduating, I started this AmeriCorps contract to build the first financial wellness program at the University at Buffalo, where I met David from Arbol. And then I basically just was looking for other opportunities in financial wellness around the world. And I found a position at Stanford that opened up as their program manager for a program called Mind Over Money, which is their financial wellness program for students and alumni. I thought it was kind of a moonshot, but I applied anyway. And I've always wanted to be in California. Growing up as a skateboarder, I wanted to be here as a professional skateboarder, but I ended up here when I got accepted into this position. And now I'm just supporting the financial well-being of students and alumni at Stanford, and then trying to see how that can bleed out into other universities around the country.
So, one of your core sort of ethos here is to help people and to understand people. You talked about bridging academic disciplines so that you had that sort of like technical business understanding, but also the social work side that gets more into making an impact in individual people's lives. And you're bringing a lot of that to bear on higher education, where the systems traditionally don't take into account such a, I hate to use the word holistic again, but holistic view of the customers that are coming in. What's it been like trying to like implement this sort of comprehensive perspective into an industry that is often viewed customers more narrowly?
Yeah, it's been interesting, especially around the financial related conversations. I know the term financial literacy gets thrown around a lot, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the term financial literacy, but I do feel like it can feel like there's some people that it might be a barrier where they might get turned off from the term financial literacy and typical financial education. Whereas the approach we take around financial wellness that I know David also shares, in that our money and our personal finance are not the ends, and that our life aspirations and the conditions of like how we feel about our current and future selves is kind of what's more relatable and important to us. And I think for students, especially who maybe didn't have conversations about money growing up, or they had conversations about it, but they were potentially unhealthy or difficult, that maybe we have a role now in addressing how to have a healthier conversation about money and how to make it more relevant to you, especially as you're navigating some of the challenges of being a student, especially around maybe having to take on student loan debt, maybe learning how to manage that in the first place when you're getting your first credit card, and maybe not knowing about how credit cards actually operate. Then there's trying to save for the future when you keep hearing all this messaging, maybe on social media from friends about you have to be investing in a Roth IRA, and you have to also be paying your debt off at the same time, and you have to have a side hustle, and then you have to be getting a 4.0. And so how do you navigate all these things at once? And then who is there to support and understand that it's not just your what's in your bank account, it's how does your financial life influence your overall well-being, and how does your stress impact your academic success and your ability to make better choices and align your choices with your values now and even after you graduate, not having to delay the important things in your life, like starting a family or buying a home or moving to where you really want to live, and not having to sacrifice the career that helps people because you need to have a higher salary. I think those are just some things that come to mind in terms of thinking more of the whole person versus just these little segments of a person.
Yeah, well put. Dave, let's swing that same kind of subject over to you. Talk a little bit about your perspective on traditional financial literacy in the higher ed space, and what you and Arbol's sort of perspective is on what's actually needed to support students.
Yeah, right now I think financial literacy is it's too disconnected from student outcomes. And if you think of it from the perspective of, and this happens in higher education, where it turns into learning modules and videos, or things that the students kind of learn in a vacuum. So for instance, like how to create a budget, or how to, what's a loan. But it really doesn't translate or connect the dots between, really what the students' financial goals are, and, how they can achieve them. So for instance, a lot of, we work with private nonprofits, and some of them, have a higher price tag and an actual net price that students have to pay. That means they have to come out of their pocket to pay for college. Unfortunately, a lot of students don't really understand that. And they don't have a plan on how they're going to pay that portion of the bill. And that's where that financial literacy, the understanding of the tactics that you can apply, connected to, hey, I have $2,000 I need to cover out of pocket. That's connecting the dots, and some of that is severely disconnected. And a lot of that goes back to, I think, like how higher education used to be set up at some point, where the price of tuition was cheaper, and aid went farther, covered more of the bill, where students were in less of that circumstance. Now it's to the point where colleges really have to think about how they're supporting students financially so that they can focus on their studies, because essentially students just aren't able to fully finance their college currently, and or just their life while in college. And that goes back to thinking about the wellness of the student more holistically, because it goes beyond just like, this is how much financing I'm able to provide through a merit scholarship and maybe what you're eligible from federal financial aid. It's, this is the financial support and understanding and activity you need to do and complete while you're in college to be successful. That way you are financially well. That way your overall well-being is affected. But until that paradigm shift happens, we're going to deal with the fallout of that. And I think you're seeing colleges and universities start to kind of become a little bit more aware of that. And hence why you're seeing more jobs and roles like the ones that Daniel has to kind of fill in some of that gap.
Okay, Danielle, tell us a little bit more about the Mind Over Money program and what it's like trying to implement these goals over wider populations of students.
Yeah, so a lot of our mission is around democratizing access to the resources that best promote financial well-being. And so, for example, some of the services we offer are one-on-one coaching. I mean, we have this, I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in higher education financial wellness, that you look into HEFWA, which is the Higher Education Financial Wellness Association Alliance. They have a summit every year, and I've learned a lot from their example. And so I bring that up because every program has a different structure. And for us, our coaches are all volunteers. A lot of them are alumni of Stanford and have different expertise, whether they're financial planners, advisors, CFOs of big companies. It runs the gamut, and myself, financial social worker. So you have a variety of who you can talk to. But you have the one-on-one coaching for that more intimate, personalized, and relationship over time that can help promote financial well-being. We have an academic course we teach over 10 weeks, and then we do events and workshops throughout the year that cover topics that are generally for a specific population. And so we really try to focus on serving specific communities that have some demonstrated need, or maybe have either underutilized or have not had specific resources for them. So maybe it's first generation and low income students, international students. We do in community centers like the Black House, or at Terra, which is the LGBTQ plus community center. And so how are we personalizing not just the content of what we're talking about when it comes to promoting financial well-being, but also the language we're using to make it more approachable? I'd say one key learning lesson that I've learned a lot from my team is about the language we use and how to make it more accessible and approachable. And I'll give an example. Like David mentioned, the typical like how to create a budget, or maybe there's like how to invest, or how to manage debt. And so we like to think of these reframes that maybe make it a little more personalized and wellness focused, like spending mindfully, earning enough, borrowing with intention, building your financial wellness supports, growing your money. Because sometimes you might hear a word like budget or investing, and that can immediately turn some people off, or might remind of some scripts about your identity that say, oh, investing's not for me, but maybe growing my money is something that I can actually wrap my head around. And David also mentioned about tying financial education or wellness promotion with outcomes. And so some of the things we try to do is, especially in our course, it's not like an academically rigorous course. We're not just trying to like make you more literate. We want you to get stuff done. So I literally have sessions that we call GSDs. That's like get stuff done. And so it's like by the time you leave, you're going to have something tangible and meaningful in your personal financial life that you can feel good about. And so whether that's to reduce stress, improve confidence in making decisions, improving motivation in engaging with your financial life, and also promoting your future self. What are some of the things you can do right now that we can help design some behavior around that can be most helpful and time based? And that's going to be different for someone who's an undergrad, like a freshman, or someone in grad school, like a PhD student. And our coaching is also available to alumni. So we get to see how we start to intervene when they're in school and then follow up with them and see, well, how can we be helpful in keeping the ball rolling when you get your first job or when you start a family or when you're now more actively planning for retirement. And yeah, starting off with the approachable language, wellness focus, clarifying values and aspirations, and then shifting into, all right, let's actually get it done, make it practical. And I think that's kind of our approach and how we're serving students.
Yeah, great. Dave, anything to add about what works? What are some of the best practices in terms of meeting the students where their needs are at and moving the ball down the field? Like I've heard you say you can drop loads of financial literacy content on their lap. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to that's going to improve anything in their lives. How do you actually access that point in the relationship where you can start making a meaningful difference and creating positive change?
Yeah, it's breaking it up to digestible steps, and it's providing the student with a roadmap to get to the point where they have financial sustainability. And then they can start thinking about those next level things. I'll give you an example of that. It's, if first things first is that students, a lot of times they're financially independent for the first time. So helping them to understand and grasp what the cost or what their financial obligations are. So for instance, if it's that net price that they have to pay, understanding what that number is, and then guiding them to connect to different steps or actions that they can take to kind of get that number to zero. That's the difference between financial wellness and literacy. I have a $2,000 net price I have to cover. Here's the different steps I can take. I can see if mom and dad, if they're around, can support me. And maybe they can put 1,000 towards it. Maybe I can work 10 hours a week and get a work study job. And maybe I can apply for private scholarships and grants because I have time. I can put together that plan, and then students start to execute against it. And what you'll see, because when we test students before they even have a plan, we go, what's your financial confidence level right now? And oftentimes on average, it'll be a 4. After they compile or build that plan, on average, it goes to a 7. And just being able to have a plan that they can trust and a roadmap to kind of like achieve their goals and kind of the basics of it makes a big difference. Then you can extrapolate that up to the next step, which is, well, do you understand, your day-to-day expenses and your school expenses? And then you can help them understand how to finance that. Once you get past that step, now you can start thinking more broad or mid or long term, like how much debt am I on track to graduate with? Or, hey, I want to start investing or think about some future goals. I want to go to graduate school. But, and that's kind of how you sequence it. And when you can kind of like make it digestible and provide students a clear roadmap with clear actions to take along the way, that's how you build success. To us, it's about understanding where you are, understanding what you need to do next, and then after you achieve that milestone, taking you to the next one.
Thanks. Danielle, talk to me about characterize students in 2023. Like they're stepping onto your campus. What needs, issues, challenges do they have, from your observation, from your anecdotal sort of interactions with them?
Yeah, so I think one major thing that comes to mind is just how do you access information that you can trust? I think it's really easy to get inundated by, and I'm not saying, no judgments made about where you access your specific information, but a lot of people and kids that I'm talking to are talking or listening to influencers on TikTok, maybe YouTube. And I'm sure there's a lot of good information from some of the people that they're getting this information from, but how do you distill it into something that you can feel like you can trust and act on? Because there's learning about these terms from people where it's like, I mentioned the term Roth IRA, and a lot of students, they're like, oh, I've heard of that. Like, I should have that. But understanding what makes it actually relevant and important to them is a different story. And so I think a lot of students are looking for just someone to talk to and to actually just be able to sparse through some of the information, which is great to have. But then how do you design your behavior and not get distracted by all the information gathering so that you can actually put it into practice and feel just a bit better, at least from those next steps? And I love how David framed it, where it's like, where are you at right now? What are the next steps? And then how do you keep breaking that down into small chunks that you can keep that momentum going? But the accountability, I think, goes such a long way. I know for me personally, I need to have some accountability for some of the most important things in my life. And I'm sure that's relatable, not just with your finances, but with your health. It's like you have your accountability buddy that you go to the gym with. And a lot of times, even when I'm doing a workshop, I'll literally say, like, well, having some routine about managing your money, maybe you have someone that you do it with. It could be a partner, it could be a parent. And I've literally had people in the session schedule a money date together, and they would meet up and start to spend that little bit of time to even just develop awareness of like how they were spending throughout the week. And again, I love to merge these worlds of like philosophy and wellness with personal finance. And I think it comes down to like awareness and intentionality with your personal finances. And I think that's the kind of thing that maybe resonates more with a younger generation now that is more wellness focused on promoting mental health and having more vulnerability in their conversations with even their friends when money used to be more of a taboo topic to even talk about. I think making it feel more like you can have these conversations. But again, making sure you're not being sold to by people who are selling the next crypto scam. I think trying to distill that and having those healthy, trustworthy conversations is important. So where are those supports when it's not even required in a lot of high school education as well? How do we have those conversations earlier? Even if you're not an expert, parents can have these conversations too.
Yeah, I think to piggyback a little bit off the cacophony of information that's out there, and we interact with students, weekly, daily, and students will say, well, what about infinite banking, and what about, which is a new trend on TikTok, and what about investing in crypto, or do you use Robinhood and all this stuff? And that's all well and fine. Part of it is helping them, and really what they're looking for are solutions without having a full understanding of where they are in their journey. So for instance, Daniel mentioned the Roth IRA. If you're in your first year in college, that's not something that, yes, you should understand what that is, and it's a useful vehicle for you once you get a job. But right now, it's, do you have the financing to comfortably live on a day-to-day basis? Are you paying for college comfortably? Anything beyond that is a win for you. Are you borrowing effectively and responsibly so that you're not over borrowing, so you're not graduating with more debt that you need? That's where a lot of the focus needs to be, and a lot of times it's just helping students to understand where they are today, and if you're adding the intentionality part of it, what are the best steps for you to take right now? And then understanding, hey, once we've got that taken care of, we can start thinking about investing or saving and how to get there. But a lot of times it's just noise to them, and they end up getting spun around because it's oh, I heard about infinite banking. Oh, I heard about this. I heard about that, and it just turns into a cycle, and they can get lost. Lastly, I think like banking is very much a cultural, or banking, personal finance, just finances overall is very cultural. And I think that's a part of the wellness piece is, giving students the confidence to understand and believe that they can tackle their finances, a big hurdle to overcome, especially when students come from historically economically depressed cultures or communities. Because a lot of times, a lot of like financial progression seems like a huge mountain to climb. In reality, when you do, let them understand that working a part-time job generates $20,000 a year for you that you can use, and that's money you can spend towards things. And yeah, you can manage that and balance that out with school. Those are the type of things that start to click for students. But it takes some time for them to really like comprehend and understand, so that mountain doesn't feel like a mountain anymore. So, yeah.
Dave, your team is rabble-rousing in the hallway out there. Every time I turn around, there's more Arbol team members in our office. Dave, I'm going to keep it with you here, and then we'll throw it to Danielle for final thoughts. So, if those are the individual problems that students or challenges that the students present, how do you solve them in a systemic way? What needs to change in your view in higher ed? Both of you have really great perspectives. You're on the inside of this, so systemically, what needs to change on campus so that you're doing a better job of meeting students where they're at?
I think this is starting to happen, but I think colleges and universities need to shift their paradigm about the financial support that they provide for their students and the type of financial support. It goes beyond, we need to think beyond just processing financial aid, and that's done. It's about more how do you take a look at the bigger picture of what the financial commitment of going to school is, and ensuring students don't just have the maximum financial aid and all of the merit scholarship you can give to them, but you're also giving them a plan so they can understand and address the rest of the financial commitment. And that's a different service and a different delivery model, but I believe in today's day and age it's essential for colleges and universities to commit to make sure that their students are able to stay through 4 years.
Thanks, Dave. Same question to you, Daniel.
I feel like at least at a university like Stanford too, this might exist a lot of places, but sometimes there's a lot of siloing in terms of the information that is available to students on, let's say, taxes. That's something that comes up every year, especially with grad students, where all the information is in different places, and especially around like the financial wellness conversations. If there's not a specific center or program around financial well-being or financial success or whatever they want to call it, a lot of times it's like all over the campus. And so how do we consolidate some of the information in one place? And also, I know the FAFSA had some updates recently, and I think that's a good step in the right direction so that it's a little more of a straightforward and simple process and not some like big thing that is going to take forever, and that there's all these terms that are difficult to navigate. And even with international students, there's a lot of barriers, especially around affording their education and then having to navigate private loans. And so how do we provide more of those resources in creative ways that help students not have to focus so much on how are they going to meet their financial needs right now, and be able to focus on their education? I think that's an investment that the college needs to make, because it's going to help promote retention and academic success among all of their student body. And to be honest, even in high school, I know there's organizations like Next Gen Personal Finance that are pushing to push policy change that makes personal finance education and support required in high schools, especially before you take on maybe more debt than you actually need for school. So maybe some updates to how entrance counseling is approached as well, because a lot of the students I talk to don't even remember their entrance counseling and exit counseling. So yeah, how do we help students borrow the least amount possible while also being able to have a healthy cushion to live well during school, but also not have to delay the most important things in their life after they graduate?
That's Danial Khan from the Mind Over Money program at Stanford University. Dave Gonzalez, the CEO of Arbol. I'm Dan Miner. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you check us out again for more webinars about serving students in the higher educational industry. Okay, thanks guys. We'll talk to you again.